into roll call, starting with President Lunaharo.
Here.
Vice President Chaput, present. Vice President Hokuson. Secretary Wu.
Here.
Chief of Staff. Director of PR. Late. Director of Wellness and Inclusion. Director of Campus Community Outreach. Pro Temp Ludawan. Senator Fisher is excused. Senator Hordern. Senator Khan. Senator Pena. Senator Rose. Senator Ritchie. Senator Novak. Senator Gillis. Senator Capo. Senator Weddle. Advisor Artajani. Advisor Wadsworth. Webb. Wildcat Media. CFB. Wildcat Esports. SAC. Absent. And ResLife. That concludes roll call. Moving into approval of the minutes agenda, starting with today's agenda. Is there any discussion for today's agenda? Senator Novak.
I would like to make a motion to move Bill Resolution 2526-15 to the beginning of new business.
We have a motion to move Resolution 2526-15 to the beginning of new business. Is it seconded? Seconded by Senator Weddle. Moving to discussion on the amendment of the agenda. Is there any discussion for this amendment? Senator Novak.
If this isn't discussed today, Wildcat Esports is going to lose like $40,000, so it should probably be the first thing we discuss as it's the most pressing.
All right. Is there any further discussion for the amendment to the agenda? Seeing no further discussion, does anyone oppose unanimous approval of this change? Seeing no opposition, that passes unanimously. Back into the discussion of the agenda as a whole. Is there any further discussion for today's agenda? Senator Weddle.
Campus and community outreach's name from the roll call. Just wondering. I don't know if we're looking to add their first name or their last name. Their first name is listed within reports. Last name is the.
I'm going to
So I
yield to the
didn't know
secretary.
So I just put the director.
And I can fix it for next time.
President Ludawan? Nope. President Haro. It's been a day.
Can someone make a motion to fix it, please? Thank you.
Senator Weddle? Okay. We have a motion to add in the Campus of Community Outreach last name. Yeah, it was so heard and then seconded by Ludawan. All right, moving in discussion of the amendment. Is there any discussion for this amendment? Seeing none, does anyone not approve unanimous approval of this amendment? All right, seeing no disapproval, that is amended. Back in discussion of the agenda as a whole. President Lunaharo.
I'd like to entertain a motion to include MVCC as our guest speakers.
By Pro Tem Ludawan. Is there a second? Second by Senator Rose. All right, moving to discussion on the amendment. Is there any discussion for the addition of MVCC's representatives to announcements? Guest speakers. Seeing no discussion, does anyone not approve of unanimous approval? Seeing no opposition, that passes unanimously. Back into the agenda as a whole. Is there any further discussion for the agenda as a whole? Seeing no further discussion, we'll go into voting on the agenda. All those in favor of today's agenda, please raise your hand. All those opposed? All those who abstain? That passes unanimously. All right, moving on to the minutes of 11:06. Is there any discussion for the minutes of 11:06? Senator Novak.
There was an issue in which one of the votes for the motion I made during the first motion I made during the CFB to change the enactment. There's a vote for calling for the call to question, but the vote isn't down for the actual voting on the meeting on the agenda. It says the agenda motion. It says the motion dies, and that's it without having an actual vote.
All right. Is there any further discussion for the minutes? I'm going to refer to it.
Through the YouTube video live stream, and I'm like 80% sure that at that time the vote was cast, but then it wasn't said out loud, and I didn't get it down. So when I was rewatching through the YouTube video, there wasn't really anything I could do but just say that it died. So, sometimes you win some, you lose some.
Alrighty. Continuing into the discussion of the minutes of 11:06, is there any further discussion? Senator Weddle.
This report, 12:48 p.m. I don't believe that was actually stated.
Is there a second? Second by Pro Tem Ludowan. Moving into report. Anyone not approve of unanimous approval? Seeing no disapproval, that passes unanimously. Back into discussion of minutes of 11:06. Is there any further discussion for the minutes of 11:06? Seeing no further discussion. All those in favor of the minutes for 11:06, please raise your hand. All those opposed, and all those who abstain. Senator Novak, you never voted. We're going to run that back again. All those in favor of approving the minutes for 11:06, please raise your hand. All those who disapprove, and all those who abstain, that passes 10-0-0. All right, moving into the minutes of last meeting. Is there any discussion for last meeting's minutes? Senator Weddle. Apologies, I couldn't hear you. Could you say that again? We have a motion to change the date at the very beginning to say November 20th, seconded by Senator Novak. Is there any discussion for this change? It can be covered under House rules, or we can make it as a motion. Is there any discussion for the amendment? Seeing no discussion, I'll be moving into voting on the amendment. Does anyone not approve unanimous approval of the amendment? Seeing no disapproval, that passes unanimously. Back into the minutes as a whole. Is there any further discussion for the minutes? Senator Novak.
I'd like to motion to change the first motion to adjourn to say instead of saying motion to adjourn till December 4th, as it was the original motion made by Wildcat Media was a motion to adjourn to December 4th and not a motion to adjourn.
All right. Is there a second? Second by Senator Rose. Moving in discussion on the amendment, adding in motion to adjourn until December 4th to the first motion of adjourning. Is there any discussion for this? Seeing no discussion on the amendment, we will go into voting. Does anyone not approve unanimous approval for this amendment? Seeing no to the minutes as a whole for 11:20. Is there any further discussion for 11:20's minutes? Seeing no further discussion, we'll go voting on 11:20's minutes. All those in favor of the minutes for last meeting, please raise your hand. All those opposed, and all those who abstain, that passes 10-0-0. That concludes the approval of the minutes and agenda. Moving on to announcements, starting with election results. All right, as committee chair, I will make these results. The results are as follows. For the treasurer, Grayson Weddle was elected. For the secretary, Kaylee LaSorsa was elected. For chief justice, Summer Wu was elected. For senior senators, Amna Khan and Grayson Weddle were elected. For junior senators, Michaela Ritchie was elected, and for sophomore senators, Aiden Pena, Kendrick Hordern, and Jackson Beckman were elected. I would like to ask that Grayson Weddle stay afterwards from the meeting to talk to me, and that Jackson Beckman come up for swear-ins at the time of swear-ins. Thank you. Grayson Weddle.
Do you not have the vote counts recorded? And if so, is there a reason they're not being announced?
The vote counts for...
The respective...
Correct. I do. I just didn't want to. I just gave a general outline. That was my personal decision. Would
Why
you
was that
like...
not consulted with election committee? I guess I'm just
That
curious.
was consulted with election committee.
That was the consensus of election committee?
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
Alrighty. That concludes announcements. Moving into guest speakers.
Can you hear me? Okay, my name is Sarnai. I'm the current Vice President of Student Congress, and this is Pio. Pio, I'm the treasurer. We're here. Thank you for letting us come to your meeting. We're also excited to have our collaboration tomorrow at Professionals Day, and I hope to see everyone there and us there as well. Is that me?
No.
All right. Thank you.
All right. That concludes guest speakers. Moving into executive reports, starting with President Luna Haro.
Good morning, everybody. Today is our last meeting for this semester. I'd say we had a pretty good semester. We've had our ups and downs, obviously. And it's also pretty cold outside, so I appreciate everyone making the effort to come in today. Just to give everyone a rough overview of how the semester went on my end. So my main goal for this semester was to build strong communications with the administrators, which I talked about extensively when I was running for president last spring, for those who were there. My main goal is to really put student government out there, making sure that our voice is being heard and that we have influence in the decisions that the campus makes. And with how things currently stand with student government and the administrators, I'd say we're at a really good spot. The administrators knows us, and we have a student voice in almost every meeting that they have, and in every pillar meeting that they're going to have next semester. I know some of you have seen me speak at events representing SGU. I don't do those just for the giggles. These are like genuine efforts to make sure that student government is out there and that our voice is being noticed and that we are being represented in almost everything that's happening on campus. And with this foundation set up, next semester will be what I call an action semester. So do expect a lot of things to come out from student governments, initiatives, all this stuff, especially coming from my end. A lot of things will be worked on. A lot of things will come out from student government. In addition, one of the initiatives have already started. So to support student transportation needs, I've been in meetings going back and forth with Centro to talk about what I call the Mamdani project. Essentially, we're looking to give everyone free access to Centro Bus. Ideally, we want a partnership with Centro, but if it falls through, we'll just be buying free bus passes for everybody. And essentially, everybody at SUNY Poly will be able to take the bus for free anywhere in Utica as long as the bus is operational. And this is in today's reserve spoon resolution, so that's a little explanation of why that line is there in the first place. So yeah, it was a great semester, and thank you.
All right. Moving on to Vice President report. Howdy, y'all. As we come to the close of the semester, I've been working on some policy changes that I can't really go into depth on or explain, but it will be seen early into the next semester. Along with that, I've pretty much met all the goals that I wanted to meet when I ran for election, so I will start making new goals for next semester. Thank you. All right, moving on to Vice Treasurer. All right, moving on to Secretary.
Had a good time as interim secretary. Be on your lookout. Kaylee's way stricter than I am with all the minutes and all the things for the meetings, so make sure you get on your A game for that, and thank you.
All right, that concludes executive reports. Moving on to direct reports, starting with Chief of Staff.
Hello. First of all, I'd like to say that the director has been completed, and today we have our new director of leadership development with us, which will be sworn in. Also, tomorrow will be our professional development day, so I hope to see you all there. It'll be from 3 to 5:30, as I
All right, Director of PR still absent. Director of Wellness and Inclusion. Oh, sorry, Assistant Director of PR is here. All right.
Okay. Hey, everybody. With the election finally coming to an end, we will be starting on the long-awaited name to try and get issues soon. For committees are still in the works. Some have already been completed and updated to Engage, along with a new folder in our Engage for these committee logos, I think. I don't know, Denny, what piece of information, but preparations of materials for will be semester, and yeah, that's about it.
All right. Director of Wellness and Inclusion.
Okay. Hi guys. Okay, so recently a QR code for the Wellness Inclusion Survey was posted on SU Instagram, but we've only received a small number of response. So to better capture the voices of our campus community, I am planning a campus-wide email to be sent out with the help of Denny. I yield.
All righty. Director of Campus Community Outreach.
Hi guys, I have a couple plans coming up for next semester. Next semester I'm hoping to meet with the Little League Utica to have them come out to a practice and eventually maybe branch that out to all the other sports. I've also been working with the Sisters in Utica, the Catholic Church, to plan some community service. Does this one work? Can we hear me now? Cool. I'm also planning with the Sisters in Utica to plan some community service opportunities for the students.
All right. Res Life.
Hello? Hello? Okay. So, if everyone make sure that they fill it out, if you're a residential student, the winter break form, it is due the 10th. And every residential student, yes?
For the Blake form, what if we don't know yet when we're leaving?
If you're planning on leaving any day after Friday at 12, please contact the AD of your respective complex. Did that answer your question? Or
Doesn't the form require we put the specific day we're leaving?
yeah, but if there's any extenuating circumstances, you could contact your assistant director. Cool. That is all. I yield.
All righty. Advisor Artajani.
Hi, everybody. Just wanted to congratulate everybody on the recent election. Great job there. Wish everybody good luck on your finals. And I hope you all have a wonderful, restful, well-deserved break. Thanks for all that you've done this semester.
Advisor Wadsworth.
I echo exactly what Kathy had said. I yield.
All right. That concludes director reports. Moving on to committee reports, starting with policy. Howdy, y'all. This last week we discussed the bill that's currently on the table today. This week we'll begin and potentially complete initial draft for contract updates. Come join us if you would like in Kinsella A219 at 3 p.m. Thanks. Moving on to Budget Committee.
Good morning, everybody. Financial Policy 12th edition is finished. It is done. It is completed. We might go through a final review with the advisor before we put it on the table. We might go a final review with John Rio before we put it on the table to make sure that everything is good and perfect. We want to make sure that is a proper policy and that there's no loopholes or anything like that. In addition, current reserves is reviewed extensively with our budget committee. So if anybody has any questions regarding that, it has been reviewed, it has been looked over, and
All right. Student Success Committee.
Was last night. We will be sending out a student success survey soon. I hope all of you will fill that out. As I mentioned throughout the semester, we were working on a first year seminar curriculum rework or review. That will be continued next semester. We also are planning a workshop for tomorrow for students with ADHD. So if that is applicable to any of you, I encourage you to attend.
All right. Student Center Advisory.
We've had a mostly pretty good semester. Our last meeting, we finished up our survey, and we are also starting to finish up our plans for the late night lounge. We're just waiting back on estimates from facilities. We're also waiting on facilities to update the signs, but they should be working on that, and that is about it.
All righty. Wellness and Inclusion Committee.
Okay, so we had our last meeting this Tuesday, and the committee reviewed and updated a list of recommended items for the wellness vending machine from Lauren. And most of the items suggested were already there, so the committee is discussed adding additional items such as like spray deodorant, chapsticks, and hair ties. And also, we have our hot chocolate and cozy game scheduled for Friday, tomorrow, from 2 to 6 in the library, and the event is funded by SU Wellness and Inclusion.
All righty. Food Committee.
Well, but in recent meetings, we've had limited items to discuss and few students attending. Because of this, we've discussed potentially switching to doing meetings bi-weekly. And we will give the final decision at a later date. Also, today's meeting has been canceled. I yield.
All righty. Safety and Facilities.
Once again, both UP and facilities, despite me emailing them, have not been showing up to meetings, so we've been limited in what we can do other than just discussing, hey, there's a problem here, this is the problem, we know it's a problem, but we can't enact on it as we lack the staff. So next semester, I'm going to hopefully try and find a better time, I guess, that works for them, that can be more consistent. I yield.
All righty. Class Gift Committee.
This evening at 5 p.m. It's outside of our regularly scheduled meeting time. We're just going to be reviewing the class gift survey that we hope to have out to all students soon. We will not be meeting tomorrow. That's all from us. Please enjoy your winter break.
Alrighty. Election Committee. Howdy all. We have completed and confirmed the results as announced. The committee will stay active according to policy but have concluded normal operation. Thank you. That concludes committee reports. Moving on to organizational reports, starting with Webb.
Hi, 1 second. Okay. Hi, everybody. It has been an insane semester. I just want to say thank you all again for your help this semester, whether you helped with casino night or anything, or just coming to events and attendance in general. We really can't thank you all enough for attending events. We're starting to put everything together for the next semester as well, and it's just been insane attendance and everything. We hope to keep that up as well. Hope everybody has a great winter break and aces their finals. I yield.
CFB.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'd just like to say it's been a pretty good semester for the clubs as we've grown and almost doubled the size of clubs we have on campus. We've been able to work through a bunch of policy changes to make sure everything goes more smoothly, as smoothly as possible, and hope to continue that next semester. I yield.
Wildcat Media. Wildcat Esports.
Hello, everyone. Happy to say Wildcat Esports is still operational. Teams are finishing up their seasons. Planning for next semester has already begun with an event, Casual Meets Competitive, scheduled for January 22nd. Additionally, tryouts will be held over break as the last day to register for teams is also January 22nd, which is the first week of classes.
All right. That concludes organizational reports. Moving to the approval of changelog, there are no changes to approve. Moving on to old business, there is no old business. Moving on to new business, starting with resolution number 2526-15, Senator Khan.
Resolution number 252615.
Seconded by Pro Tem Ludewan. You can continue.
We, the Senate of SUNY Poly Student Government Utica, do hereby resolve, whereas within our 2520 24, 25, 26, $40,000 was put into a restricted reserves account with a deadline of January 1st, 2026 to spend. And whereas Wildcat Esports was not able to directly access this funding through purchase requests until November 20th, 2025, and whereas Wildcat Esports has spent the first portion of the semester assessing the needs of the new esports arena to determine where funding and resource allocation is appropriate. And whereas Wildcat Esports wishes to continue to assess the needs of the new space and utilize the funds within the account during the spring 2026 semester to further improve the space. And whereas Wildcat Esports will be able to provide the needs for the large 2026 class without needing additional funds from a reserves pool, therefore be it enacted. The student government Utica agrees to extend the deadline to spend the remaining funds to the end of the fiscal year per the SUNY Poly Auxiliary Services. Therefore be it resolved. Be it finally resolved, the student government Utica will allow the extended use of funds to ensure Wildcat Esports has additional time to renovate and improve the new esports arena.
Moving into discussion of the resolution, Senator Novak.
My question's more for the resolved section. I also do apologize if this is priority information I was not supposed to know, but this was given to me by an esports officer. I was told by an esports officer supposedly the arena is moving again into a new space that's been being constructed in the new campus center renovations. If that is the case, what do we need the money for to renovate the current esports arena if it's only going to be there until like next fall, since the campus center is estimated to be finished during the summer? I also apologize if this information is wrong. It was just told to me by an officer. I yield to esports.
Yeah, so to clarify that, I was also informed out of nowhere that the school, like faculty, were planning to do something in the CC. It's not to move the arena, but rather to give us a space in the CC. However, they haven't informed us other than a rumor here and there, so I don't think there's any factual factors behind that. So, yeah,
Alrighty. Is there any further discussion for this resolution? Senator Weddle.
Questions regarding the resolution as a whole. Is there a reason access this funding until 2 weeks ago? My understanding is this was approved all the way back in April. I'm just going to yield to esports to answer that.
Yeah, so this budget, or this reserves pool was approved for the esports arena to like actually construct it, and so their estimate was a lot higher than it actually ended up being, and so I personally didn't know that I had leftover money to fix up and renovate the esports arena, so a lot of the improvements that I was planning to take out of our current budget, which if we have the budget for renovating it for these purposes, then I might as well just use the budget. Yeah, I yield.
Advisor Wadsworth.
To add on to that, they got the invoice. No, you're fine. They got the invoice for the construction month and a half, 2 months ago. But within the resolution to create this account, there was no outline on how to actually purchase it. So how does it go through the approval process if there is no account on Engage for it? So it was not a line in our budget. There was no account on Engage created for it. So we had to work through the process of figuring out how to actually spend that money. So it's taken a while for everybody to determine that. And so now that the line has been created on Engage, we are all good on that realm. So now PIN is able to actually access that funds to put in purchase requests to spend it. I yield.
All right. Senator Weddle.
It was chosen to only extend it. I'm sorry, I'm missing for exactly where this is, but my understanding is you're extending the reserves pool to the end of the fiscal year. Is there a reason you're doing it until the end of the fiscal year as opposed to the end of 2026? Because it seems like you could open it up to having access to those funds if there's anything unspent for next fall as well. I yield.
Advisor Arjani.
Per auxiliary services, the way they do their budget, it has to be, they have to clean everything up by the end of their fiscal year. So since it all goes through auxiliary services, we need to follow their criteria and their policy per their auditors. So it needs to be spent through them by the end of their fiscal year. I yield. Sorry.
Senator Weddle.
Supposed to be a reserved account that's separate from our operating budget. So from an accounting perspective, it doesn't follow, the same thing that our organization accounts necessarily follow. The stipulations that were originally created when this $40,000 was allocated was allowing it to be extended until the end of 2027. So I'm curious why that option wasn't taken advantage of, I guess. I yield.
Our advisor.
PIN is only the esports org head until April-ish. So they felt it appropriate that they could utilize this current board that they have to make changes, and just to ensure that changes are being made in a, I don't want to say fast pace, but ensuring that they're making changes when they need to so that things aren't being delayed. There's no confusion. They have a cohesive plan. So therefore, the board that is currently implemented can really think through a whole plan for the arena without needing to make so many switches. And then next semester, say this board buys PCs, and then next year the next board wants to buy new PCs because they like this brand better, and just making sure that everything is one plan. So they felt it was appropriate and could be spent by April. I yield.
Alrighty. Is there any further discussion? Seeing no further discussion, we'll be moving into voting on resolution number 2526-15. All those in favor of approving resolution 2526-15, please raise your hand. All those opposed and all those who abstain, that passes 10-0-0. Moving on to resolution 2526-14. Senator Pena.
Sorry. Motion to accept resolution number 2526-14.
Do we have a second? Sent by Senator Ritchie. You can continue.
We, the Senate of SUNY Poly Student Government at Utica, do hereby resolve, whereas esports has a new Marvel Rivals team with lots of interest, and Wildcat Esports Valorant teams have developed and require team management, and whereas Wildcat Esports does not currently have the funding necessary within the stipend account to pay the volunteer team managers, therefore be it enacted, the student government at Utica agrees to transfer $1,360 from general programming into the WCE team manager line, and the student government at Utica agrees to pay the two volunteer team managers 75% of the stipend from their start date of September 24th, 2025 for their time and efforts through the semester. Therefore be it resolved, the student government at Utica will allow the transfer of funds so that Wildcat Esports may retroactively pay the volunteer team managers for their time as officers.
Alrighty, moving in discussion. Senator Novak.
I could be wrong here, because I apologize if I am wrong, because I am not part of esports as an org, but isn't one of the team managers who's not being paid the Overwatch team manager? And the Overwatch team manager isn't mentioned in this bill. It's Marvel Rivals and Valorant. So I was wondering, are we not going to pay our Overwatch team manager? I yield.
Let's see if Wildcat Esports. All right. Is there any further discussion on the resolution? Senator Weddle.
Included in the reserves pool, I yield to our esports representative.
Is there any further discussion on the resolution? Seeing none, we'll move into voting on Resolution 2526-14. All those in favor of the resolution, please raise your hand. All those opposed, and all those who abstain, that passes 901. Moving on to resolution number 2526-16, Senator Novak.
We, the student government of, motion to approve resolution number 2526-16.
A motion, is there a second? Second by Senator Ritchie.
We, the Senate of Student Party Government at Utica, do hereby resolve, whereas the student government at Utica recognize the purpose of the reserve fund to support unexpended organizational needs, operational demands, and infrastructure improvements, and whereas the club funding board has experienced an unexpected increase in new club registration required activation fundings, as well as a higher volume of extra funding requests, creating the need for additional financing support, and whereas the workload of the club funding board treasurer has significantly increased, noticing a stipend adjustment to rate ensure fair and adequate composition, and whereas the Wildcat Events Board has seen record-setting attendance in its events due to historically high student enrollment, meeting the budget strain, and internal reallocation of funds that now require replenishment, and whereas esports has expanded its competitive programming, staffing, travel, and events needs beyond its originally allocated budget, and whereas Wildcat Media incurred unexpected subscription expenses that may require full payment, and whereas the student government at Utica requires computer equipment to maintain efficient operations and administrative capacity, and whereas the student government at Utica would be likely to be close to financial barrier on the transportation of all students, therefore be it enacted the following amounts to be withdrawn from set from the reserves and moved into appropriate organizational lines. Club funding board total $19,350. $5,000 club activation funding, line 79990. $10,000 extra funding request set line 7990. $4,000 extra dollars miscellaneous purchase, new line creation. $350 treasurer stipend increase 51001. Wildcats events board total $47,700. $7,000 Apocalypse Week, line 53000. $14,500 Homegrown Events, line 5300. $3,200 Contracted Events, line 5300. $5,000 Casino Night, line 5300. $1,500 Free Movies, 53012. $15,000 Blowing, 53012. $15,000 Free with ID Events, line 53012. Esports total $10,500. $4,500 Publicity Promotions Jerseys, line 53006. $2,000 Flag Fest, line 53008. $1,000 Coaching, line 57002. $3,000 Travel and Conference, line 57001. Wildcat Media total $20,000. $4,000 Student Equipment, line 54001. $16,000 Subscriptions, line 53041. SU Computers total $16,000. $16,000 for Office Supplies, line 59004. Central Bus Initiative $6,000. $6,000 Central Bus Line new line creation. Grand total reserves withdraw $119,550. Therefore be it resolved, the above allocation shall be distributed to in accordance with SU financial policies, and any unused funds shall return to SU reserves fund at the end of the fiscal year. And be it further resolved, SU organizations to be able to operate in improved budgets can compensate for an increase in student population. And be it finally resolved, SU can provide the student body with a better campus life experience through the allocation and spending of additional funds.
All right, moving discussion. Senator Weddle.
A lot of points, I suppose. First and foremost, this wasn't submitted through Budget Committee. Per our financial policy, organizational representatives are expected to present their request to our Budget Committee. It's supposed to be discussed in Budget Committee. Budget Committee is supposed to present the reserves pool, not the Executive Board. Secondly, I don't think the Director of Auxiliary Services, who is student government's fiscal agent, was notified about this reserves pool. I don't believe it was gone over with them. a couple of the reserves polls, parts of the reserves polls are creating new lines. From my significant understanding of financial policy and SUNY policy, that's considered a budget amendment. That should not be occurring within a reserves poll. I don't know if the Director of Auxiliary Services would like to talk at all about the process for the reserves poll. If not, I have a lot of other thoughts to say. I'm going to yield back to the chair.
Alrighty. Is there any further discussion? Senator Novak?
Give me a second, sorry. I want to apologize for reading there. I currently have a problem in my mouth that makes it a pain to talk. Like physically, it hurts. But also for esports, why is coaching only $1,000? Is that enough to pay for every coach to coach every team? As currently this semester, there was a problem at least for the Marvel Rivals and Overwatch team, in which the Overwatch and Marvel Rivals coach was only paid to coach the team A's of both teams, therefore making it so that way the B teams and the C team of Rivals were basically abandoned with little to no coaching throughout the entire semester, therefore making it so we had not had the ability to improve our ability, and therefore also making it so we had less of a chance to end up winning the cash prize that's at the end of the ECAC tournament. Therefore also making it so we also have less of a chance to rank up during the next tryouts during winter break and possibly make it onto an A team or a team above the current team level we are at. I yield.
Wildcat Esports?
Yeah, I'll say the $1,000 was originally just because we didn't have enough budget for Rocket League, because Rocket League is operating without a coach currently. Not even their A team is getting coaching. I hadn't considered getting B team coaching, as that would require a hefty sum of money, as if I were to make coaching available for all, how do I say, all other teams besides A team, it would add up to a fair amount.
Senator Weddle?
Budget committee meeting minutes from this semester. Budget committee, per our meeting minutes and agendas, has only met 4 times. The only time this reserves poll was discussed, it was not a $116,000 reserves poll, it was a $70,000 reserves poll. This was when the reserves poll was supposedly first drafted. It's clearly significantly changed. There's nothing within budget committee meeting minutes. I don't know if the executive board could provide any minutes for the meetings that they've had, how they somehow arrived at this 6-figure number. Regardless, I just would like to make a motion to table this back to Budget Committee. I think this should have gone through Budget Committee in the first place. I think it's extremely concerning that it didn't, and I think it needs a lot more work. A lot of these numbers are not really explained. They're not really justified. I don't know if the Executive Board's intent was to have the organizational representatives explain them during the meeting, but I, for one, would like to see a lot more physical documentation in support of this reserves poll. I yield.
All right, we have a motion tabled back to Budget Committee. Second by Senator Novak. Into discussion on tabling back to Budget Committee. Is there any discussion? Senator Novak.
I will say this was discussed yesterday at Budget Committee, but when it was discussed, it was basically already done, and any discussion that popped up during Budget Committee was just told to discuss today during the SGU meeting. So, technically, if this was only discussed yesterday, it wasn't really discussed in a way that would be labeled as discussion, as nothing was able to be edited or talked about.
Gotcha. Is there any further discussion? Webb?
Did work with the organizations. I don't know exactly how they wanted it to be presented today. I believe that they wanted us to explain every single line and stuff, like go through a full breakdown, because the reserves poll last year there were some issues and people didn't ask questions, so they wanted us to I feel like they left it broad so you guys could ask questions for this reserves poll. I also like to put it out there that Webb does have their spring calendar plan. If this does not go through, though, we would have to rewrite most of our events, and we are starting to put things in for our events. So obviously you don't want to bank on a reserves poll, but we would like to make note that this would be seriously helpful so we can further these events so we can get these for the students. I yield to media. Can I do that?
Yeah.
Or floor, chair, media.
Senator Weddle.
The treasurer is authorized to access the budget reserves. We currently don't have a treasurer. Our president is acting treasurer, and I recognize that. The treasurer chairs budget committee. The idea behind budget committee is that it's a committee in which the organizational representatives present their idea, they present this documentation. The entire committee is supposed to be the one that creates the reserves pool. I understand that the executive board did meet with the organizational representatives. I don't know why they didn't include the documentation, the minutes, really the minutia behind these numbers. I recognize CFB's need for additional activation funding and Webb's want for additional money, but we can't really bank on a reserves pool. This is the first day that this was put on the table. This is the first day that this is being seen and discussed. I think it's extremely irresponsible to authorize the one reserves pool that we get for this entire academic year, $116,000 with about half an hour of discussion. I yield.
Our advisor, Artajani.
Can you just let me know where it states in the financial policy that the budget committee is responsible for that? I yield to Senator Weddle.
Subsection B of section 6 states, this is under, sorry, I apologize. This is under Article 1 budget policy. It states that the treasurer can only access the reserves and distribute the surplus once a fiscal year. All organizations at the site, referring to our SUNY Poly campus, are being pulled, at which reserves are being pulled from, deserves a chance to present to the budget committee any requests they may have for additional funds. They shall be given a 1-week notice of when they shall appear in front of the committee if their respective organization needs additional funding. Reserves can only be pulled more than once in times of emergency action. I understand it doesn't lay out in black and white that budget committee shall be the one to present the reserves pool, but I feel like the rather clear implication surrounding this is requests for reserves pools are supposed to occur to the budget committee. They're not supposed to occur to the executive board. The fact that this wasn't brought to the budget committee and the budget committee didn't really discuss this, they only reviewed what the executive board had already prepared, feels like a pretty significant deviation from expected policy. Again, I recognize that our financial policy is the most dated policy that we still have on the books, but it's still our policy, and until we get that 12th edition on the table, I think we have to follow it. I yield.
Webb.
To bring it to the table to give you guys all the information that we have for our numbers. I don't know if that would help or anything. I have some of mine up right now. I'm still getting all the rest of them from the old meeting that we had. I don't know if that would help or anything, but I really highly suggest we keep this on the table today. I yield to the floor.
Senator Weddle. Jesus, I apologize. Senator Novak.
So I think another part of this also about why it's being tabled back is morally, because this is another example. This would be like, this is the what's happening right now is the equivalent of if the exec board, this is just a hypothetical, so it's going to be a bit ridiculous, but the hypothetically say the exec board made a policy bill to change it so that way everyone has to wear pink shoes to the SU meeting or get a strike, and they bring it up to policy committee the week before, and they review it, but they don't talk about it, talk about changing it, and then it becomes a bill the next week. It's kind of like that, if that makes sense, because we're basically just using the, showing it to the committee as a rubber stamp, where in reality we're going around the committee or not actually using the committee for what it is, and we're ignoring the powers and jurisdictions and the checks and balances that exist because of these committees and the senators with their individual ability to vote in these committees and make changes in these committees to get around everything and just do it. And especially, I think this is a bit concerning considering how much we've been trying to crack down this semester, especially with clubs, to try and make things no longer rubber stamps. And I think it's unfair if we try and make every single stamp a HUD stamp for clubs, but we're not enforcing the same wants or the same needs on SGU. Because as SGU, we are no more special than a club. We should have the same restrictions, the same regulations, and the same expectancies to not be rubber stamping everything to get wants done. I yield.
President Nahara.
So this was brought to the budget committee yesterday. The minutes should be coming out by our co-chair very soon. And as the chair of the budget committee, in yesterday's meeting, I presented this to every member of the budget committee, and we had a discussion. You were there, and nobody disagreed with everything that was presented. Everything was talked about, and we had pretty much a unanimous approval of it. If the main issue was the fact that it was not submitted by Budget Committee, I don't mind making a motion to just add it there. In addition, as well, as the acting treasurer, I'm the one that's responsible for accessing these funds. So that is the main rationale behind making it submitted by the executive board rather than the Budget Committee. I yield.
Webb. I was just gonna say, is that before it was even presented to Budget Committee, it went through the orgs multiple times, and it's mainly the orgs that are asking for money. Obviously, personally, Webb did go back and had to change some numbers because of how crazy this semester went. But it was thoroughly combed through by me and the advisor, as well as my treasurer and my vice president. I don't know I can say the same for the other orgs, but I know on their behalf they are very diligent in this. So at least it went through multiple stages with the org heads before it was even brought to Budget Committee. And if anything, it would not have been brought to Budget Committee with these numbers if there was something seriously wrong with it. I yield.
A general point of information to the Senate, when she refers to as talking about it during our org head meetings as outlined in policy, org head meetings happen, bi-monthly, every 2 weeks. We've talked about this in 3 or 4 org head meetings, which goes back months. So this has been thoroughly discussed on the org side of things. Senator Novak?
I think the problem is that's only been discussed on the org side of things when that's not really how we're supposed to be doing it. And I was there yesterday for Budget Committee. Yes, it's true. I brought up some concerns I had with the budget, and they were just kind of hand-waved to discuss it today during Policy Committee. Not Policy Committee, during the actual SGU meeting. And we only spent half of the meeting on this. And, I wasn't there before the break, like the meeting right before break, so I can't say for sure if this was discussed during that meeting, but this was only discussed for half of Budget Committee yesterday.
The meeting before this past meeting was canceled, so it wasn't, and before that wasn't discussed, I don't think.
So, okay, so then it was only discussed once the Budget Committee, and it was completely done, and at least, I know I'm not part of Budget Committee, but I had no power to change or bring up problems I saw in the public committee meeting to this, and was told just to bring it up now. And the problem is, but again, the reserves pool, the reserves pool is supposed to be like half the effort of between the orgs and the Senate. This just seems like the reserves pool was just the orgs completely ignoring the Senate.
I don't doubt that this was discussed extensively within those org head meetings. Those org head meetings are private. They're closed door. They're not supposed to be open. There's a very different, when you're drafting something, that's when people tend to have the most impact. They can weigh in the most. They can give opinions. When you're reviewing something, it's generally a lot more set in stone. Fact of the matter is, no matter how much this was discussed in org head meetings, it was supposed to be discussed in Budget Committee. Changing who submitted the resolution doesn't really change that fact that these were supposed to be discussed in an open committee meeting that's open to all students. Per our president's comments with respect to yesterday's meeting, per the minutes, lasted 42 minutes, and half of which was a final review of financial policy, which is about 40 pages, so I have a hard time believing that it was extensively discussed. Senator Novak already mentioned that she brought up concerns with regards to the reserves pool, and they were effectively ignored. Our audience member has been up there for a while, so I'm going to yield to him.
I'm not going to yield back. We're going to let other people talk for this. Our advisor Wadsworth.
I just feel like I have to mention, subsection B says that all organizations at the site of which reserves are being pulled from deserve a chance to present to the budget committee. Does not say they have to. Take that as you will. I will say the organizations did work with the chair of budget committee to do this, who is the acting treasurer currently. There are a lot of things that are very time sensitive. I'm gonna yield. I'm gonna yield to the chair.
CFB. A motion to push back open forum. Second by Pro Temp Ludewan. Is there any discussion for pushing back open?
Do that during the motion?
As the layer of privileged motions go, it is above in this motion.
Okay.
Okay. Moving to voting on pushing back open forum. All those in favor of pushing back open forum to 55, please raise your hand.
Motion to push back open forum.
All those opposed? And all those who abstain?
Wait, can I get? I was going.
We'll run it back. Motion to push back open forum until 1:55. All those in favor of the motion, please raise your hand. All those opposed? And all those who abstain? That passes. 6-3-0. Unless I missed one. All right. Correct. Yeah. So we open forum has been pushed back. We're back in the discussion of the motion to table back to budget committee. Is there any further discussion? Senator Rose.
Yeah, I do agree with our audience member that it is a little ridiculous to be in one meeting discussing then passing almost $120,000. I understand that the organizations did plan on using this money. It would throw some issues with plans. It's kind of just a hard place. This really should have probably been brought to the table sooner to have proper discussion. I yield.
President Lunahara.
So just to give everybody a little bit of history about this whole resolution. So most of the money that has been talked about here has been extensively discussed with every single organization, and the fact that it is that our audience member mentions that this is a 30-minute discussion is disingenuous to the organizations and to our vice president, who has worked extensively with the organization about the amounts that has been presented here and everything that has been discussed. In addition, our policy mentions that all organizations at the site at which reserves are being pulled from deserves a chance to present to the budget committee, and nowhere within the policy does it mention that it has to be discussed within the budget committee. In addition, as the treasurer, I mentioned earlier, as the acting treasurer, I am the one that is submitting this in accordance with the executive board. I yield.
Secretary Wu.
If the main issue that you guys are having with this is that it's a 30-minute discussion, would it be unreasonable to ask for a Zoom emergency meeting next Thursday if people don't have finals? I don't know.
Sorry, Senator Novak.
Problem isn't the fact that it's only been 30 minutes in total. The problem is that it's only been 30 minutes where it's had the ability for the average student to weigh in. We understand, the audience member, Senator Weddle, me, and anyone else who has these concerns, understands the fact that this has been discussed for weeks with the orgs, but the problem is, again, those org meetings are closed doors. I once went in there for a second and got yelled at to instantly leave while it's being discussed, which I understand. It's my bad. I didn't know the org meeting was going on that day at that time. The point is, the general student body, who's we're getting its money for, this our student activity fees is like $200, I think. I could be wrong. That's a lot of money from our general student population that we are taking and we're just going to use without thinking about it. I'm saying this as I was going to bring this up during open forum about them to try and go against increasing the student activity fee, but I'll bring it up now because it is relevant to this. That's a lot of money, at least to students like me. I come personally from a country where 1 penny is worth more than our equivalent penny. Like
I'm just going to ask you to keep it on the decision of whether it's tabling, not on what a penny is worth in your country or this country.
500? Yeah. The point is, actually, no, this is relevant to this conversation. The point is, that's a lot of money to me. I have to pay not only the fact that my currency is worth less, so I have to pay more than everyone else at this table to even, like a lot of people at this table, to be able to even afford this college. So I have to pay that and a 30% increase currency exchange fee to my student activity fee. And you're just going to take that money that I'm paying a lot of and just going to give it without giving thought or giving me a chance to comment on what you're taking my money and using it for. I can barely afford to go to this college. There's probably a lot of other college students who are like this, and you're just taking that money and just giving it to people and to orgs.
Point of order, can you then ask? Can you ask those questions for where the money's going? Because you haven't asked those questions. You just yelled at budget committee. I'm sorry. Can you please ask those questions?
Point of order, that wasn't a valid point of order. The point is, we need to actually discuss this. We need to allow students to give their opinions and mention this. We can't just pass it. And, in my personal opinion, we should not be making budgets assuming that we're going to get, like, banking on having us passed this date. We should never have been doing that in the first place. The point of the reserves pool is to help fund things, but it's never supposed to be guaranteed, and it's supposed to be like extra help. We should already have like another thing in case it doesn't pass or the amounts don't get passed. And I think it's highly irresponsible to want to take this much money from our students without thinking about who it impacts, how it impacts, and where this money is going and having the forfeit of it. I yield.
Senator Weddle.
Advisor's comment and our president's comment per financial policy, I recognize the fact that it does not explicitly state the reserves pool must come from budget committee. However, the context that the surrounding policy provides strongly indicates that it should be coming from budget committee. Budget committee has presented the reserves pool for the last I don't know how many years. This is what's expected, right? Policy does not black and white support it. Policy strongly implies it. I think it's disingenuous to imply that the executive board can go ahead and submit a reserves pool like this. I recognize that our president is currently the acting treasurer. However, there was an ongoing election for treasurer that was happening. It seems strange that the president has taken quite literally the last day at which they are expected to be acting treasurer to submit a $116,000 reserves pool. With regards to the characterizations of our audience members' comments, insofar as this is only being publicly discussed for about 30 minutes. Last year, right, we did a reserves pool of about $94,000. We had hours of public budget committee meetings that went over this reserves pool, crafted this reserves pool, pulled in organizational representatives, included the advisors, included our fiscal agent, and those discussions were extensive. It sat on the table for a couple of days before it was finally voted on. I just think it's very inappropriate to be allocating this much money in one day. As a senatorial representative, I've only had about 24 hours to review this resolution, which is customary for resolutions, but not normally for resolutions that are offering over $100,000. That's a ludicrous amount of money. And I do just want to, since I see that our president has their hand raised, I do just want to ask, can you confirm to me the amount of money that we currently have in reserves and the amount of money that is unallocated from this year based off our student activity fee income? I yield to our president.
So first and foremost, I'll talk about Reserves Bowl. Nowhere during this whole time did we ever mention that at least from my end, that we want it voted today. Doesn't mean that it's a resolution that we want it to be voted today. It's on the table. Instead of making a motion to table it back, why don't we discuss it? Why don't we ask Webb, what's the money for? Why don't we ask CFB, what's the money for? Instead of saying, oh, we'll just table it. Let's discuss it, ask them the questions, ask us the questions. I yield.
All right, Pro Temp Ludowan. Indeed, however, because you are not a voting member or have any motioning powers, I will get to you once I've gotten to someone who's been raising their hand for actually about as long as you've been standing there. Pro Temp Ludowan.
So two things. The first one is a point of clarity for Senator Whittle. Today would not be the last day that our president is acting treasurer because executives do not get sworn in the day of election results. They get sworn in after training. And since what I'm getting is that the general issue, everybody needs more information on where and how we're spending the money. I'd like to ask the org reps to please give some details to the Senate on how you, on these numbers. Thank you.
Our audience member. Correct.
Just to ask the audience member, are you asking how much is going to be unspent at the end of the fiscal year? What are you referring to when you ask for a percentage of the budget that's unallocated?
Point of
I'm essentially asking how much money is going to be left in reserves. How much money do we currently have in reserves? How much money is going to be left in reserves after this reserves poll, if this reserves poll goes through? And secondly, we have income each year, right? Our income as an organization is the student activity fees that we collect. Our budget for this fiscal year predicted similar enrollment to last year. However, we saw a huge jump in numbers. So what current percentage of this fiscal year's income is currently unallocated? Both of those numbers would be great to have. Our president has asked us to ask questions, so again, I'm asking our president, can you please provide those numbers? I yield.
So, okay, President Lunahara.
So I'm doing the maths here. Forgive me if I'm wrong, but just to double check. As of right now in our reserves, we have $547,000. $462,000 are unrestricted cash reserves. $45,000 are fund balance designated for clubs. This is estimate. $40,000 are fund balance designated for esports arena. So looking at since our audience member asked for a percentage, we have $119,550 as the grand total reserves withdrawal, considering that the fund balance designated for clubs, $45,000, the club funding board will get their money from there. So we will not include CFB in this. So we'll minus CFB from the 119. Minus 19,350. That's 100,200. And if we're trying to find the percentage of that, that will be, yep, 1 second. we're taking out 21.68%, 0.69% of our reserves. I yield.
All right, just to piggyback on that, it was, and this is not exact number amount, this is a rounding amount. We had about $64,000 extra on top of what we budgeted for. That came in this year for the student activity fee. Senator Weddle?
Real numbers in reserves. If you don't have them, I would hope that our advisors or auxiliary services would have provided them prior to the beginning of this reserves poll, because while I recognize that's what we predicted last February, I'm looking for actual numbers because that prediction is now 8 months old. I yield back to our president.
Probably have to yield back to our advisor for the numbers as I don't have access to them.
We can connect with auxiliary services and get you the correct answers. I yield.
All right, Senator Weddle?
Question then is, why wasn't auxiliary services connected with before this reserves poll was done? I understand that last April we predicted we would have $500,000, and so it seems reasonable to pull out about $120,000. But why wasn't auxiliary services connected with? Why weren't you asked for the actual numbers of what's currently in our reserves? I don't know if that $64,000 was just a rounding or an actual, it's just a rounding?
That's a rounding.
It's just a rounding. Okay, so I appreciate that clarification. But insofar as what's in our reserves, I think it would be really helpful to know what is in our reserves, not what we predicted would be in our reserves 8 months ago. Again, that prediction was just for this past July. Time has passed since then. So it would be nice if we had an actual number before we started spending money that we think we may or may not have. Additionally, I just wanted to just kind of ask, insofar as this $120,000 that we're looking to spend, right? We're predicting about half of that is going to come from the student activity fees that were unallocated this semester, right? That was the prediction. I guess, why wasn't that number included within the reserves pool? I, for one, would have found it very helpful. It makes the reserves pool sound a lot more reasonable, right? Because in actuality, all we're doing then is spending about $60,000 from reserves because we've got this $64,000 that's coming in that we never allocated. I'm going to yield back to the chair.
President Nahara?
So thank you for your question. That's the discussion that we want to have here instead of just tabling it back. We will go forward. We'll discuss it with our advisors. We'll discuss it with our fiscal agent. It's a great question. We'll bring it up when we have that information.
Excuse me, our audience member? Senator Weddle.
I would be delighted to. I yield.
Alrighty. Do we have any further? Senator Weddle?
I'm rescinding my original motion. I'd like to motion, given that the president has stated that they'd like to consult with both the advisors and auxiliary services, that this not be voted on until at least our next meeting. So I'm asking effectively at the end of discussion for this resolution that we just move on to the remainder of our business. I yield back to the chair.
So just to clarify before I ask for a second, you are rescinding the motion to the table, making the motion to vote on this in the next meeting, and asking for a motion to end debate.
No, I'm not asking to end debate. I'm just looking to, at
Or
the
just-
conclusion, the
okay.
natural conclusion of debate. Yes, I yield back
Gotcha,
to the chair.
gotcha, okay. Is there a second? Second by Senator Novak. Moving into discussion on the motion to not vote on this week. Is there any discussion? Webb,
Emergency meeting or something?
say again.
Would you guys then hold like an emergency meeting or something then, so it is talked about before the next semester? I yield. We've done it before. Can we do it again? I yield.
President Lunahara?
We could. We'll see how things stand at the conclusion of this meeting, and if it's necessary, we will schedule one. If not, we won't. I yield.
Senator Rose.
How important is it that this reserves pool is passed like as soon as reasonably possible? I yield.
I'm going to give to Wildcat Esports first.
For us personally, we're not that urgent to make this reserve. You guys can pass it.
All right. Webb.
I can personally share that I have 46 events planned right now for the spring semester. Without this funding and knowing what we can, we're going to have to cut that. And we already have to hit a required 30 events per semester. I have been quoted so far for 12 events out of like the 41, $24,000. That's just like contracted stuff. That's not including some stuff for other contracted events because we're still awaiting those quotes and everything. And then I also have homegrown events. I also have off-campus events. I also have free movies. I also have this listed in the reserves pool. There are so many things that Webb would need this for that I would have to go back. I would have to sit in a meeting with my advisor and my exec board, and we'd have to replan the spring schedule. I literally was just about to send this out to my staff to get them the ball rolling so we get our events in on time, we don't fall behind, and we stay according to policy and schedule. This would really affect all of that, and we're averaging 100, 130 students per event. That's 100, 130 students that are going to be very disappointed next semester if they don't have events to go to. I yield.
Senator Weddle.
Big difference between holding 0 events and holding 46 events. While I understand it's always hard to cut back, I would hope that Webb as an organization has not been banking on this reserves pool as referred to earlier. I recognize that this is the money that Webb is asking for, but I don't think you can start really spending that money until you've gotten it. So I would hope there would have been a plan formulated for if this wasn't passed today. I would have hoped someone in one of those meetings would have brought up the fact, hold on a second, we're trying to authorize $120,000 in one meeting with no real prior discussion. I yield back to the chair.
Senator Novak.
Can't Webb just, while we're discussing this, just fund the events in January and February and then change like your budget to instead, and even change reserves pool to then instead have reserves for focusing on funding the events in March and April, so that way you don't have to change the schedule and you can, I mean, I know we have a month ahead of time and some of the stuff is contracted, so it takes longer, but can't you prioritize the events that are going to happen first, so that way we're not having the time limit? I yield to the advisor.
I'm not going to hear that yield real quick. I would like to remind you all we're in a motion to just vote on this in the next meeting, unless, because most of this discussion is actually what should be discussed in the main motion itself, not in the motion to just wait until next week to vote on this. I would like to ask any further discussion to be literally on the reason why it should or should not be pushed back to next week for the vote.
Point of information, the
Correct.
point of discussing this is checking to see if we can actually wait
This
or not.
discussion is asking about if they were planning or not on this reserves poll, which is a main motion discussion, not on the reason why it should be pushed back or not. I would like just for that type of discussion, since it was very targeted at one org and not at the general motion that was made, to just wait until after or to reform your way of saying it so that's focused on the actual motion at hand. Senator Weddle?
Whether or not we should vote on this today or not, we have 3 minutes left. We've barely touched on this reserves pool. I think it's extremely unrealistic to vote on it today. Whether or not an emergency meeting occurs over break is up to the executive board's discretion, as I understand. However, as our audience member and others has brought up, part of the concerns with how this reserves pool was brought to the table was with the fact that it was done largely behind closed doors. It briefly went to budget committee for review and then came to the table. I think scheduling an emergency meeting when students are off campus and on break is likely to see very little student attendance and very little student input in general. I recognize that senatorial representatives are supposed to represent their, cohorts, but it still feels like we should be discussing this in a very public, open place. I think the NPR is best suited for that as opposed to a Zoom meeting, unless we were looking to announce it to the entire campus. So with that, I would really just like to reiterate that I think this should really not be voted on this week. I yield.
Advisor Wadsworth?
So I think that very similar to last semester, we could do an emergency Senate meeting to discuss some of these issues. We would want it to be publicly noted. Could it be Zoom? Absolutely, because we do have the opportunity to put Zoom links within Engage. So very similar to last year's issues, I think that we could hold an emergency Senate meeting if needed. I yield.
Senator Rose?
Motion to call the question because there really isn't even time to discuss today anyways.
We have a motion to call the question. Is there a second? Second by Senator Novak. We'll now be voting on the motion to call the question. All those in favor of calling the question, please raise your hand. All those opposed and all those who abstain, that passes 9-0-0. We'll now be moving into voting on the motion to wait till vote on next meeting. All those in favor of the motion, please raise your hand. All those opposed and all those who abstain, that passes 8-1-0. Back into the motion as a whole. Yeah.
Motion?
Correct. The motion that just yeah.
Passed, that's correct.
The motion was to wait until next week for the vote as originally stated. Next meeting.
I apologize. I don't believe that was the original motion. I believe the original motion was just to not vote on it today. It was to essentially wait until next meeting.
When I
following
restated the
meetings.
motion prior, that is what I had stated.
I apologize. I yield back to the chair.
All right. I apologize if there was a confusion there that wasn't brought up before. Anyways, we are now in the main motion, but it is also open forum. So, is there any discussion for open forum? Senator Weddle.
We've been talking a fair amount today about policies and following policies, and I think it's important to note that our policies have been updated a couple times this semester. I have still not been able to find an updated version of our policies and procedures. I've not been able to find an updated version of CFB's policies and procedures or Constitution. I understand secretaries are busy, they're working on it, but I really would just like to urge the fact that we should have these policies available, especially as we're updating them. It runs into situations where we're not sure which policy we're using and which policy we're not. I did also want to note that for some reason, the financial policy 11th edition has been modified. There was no bill ever put on the table to modify it, but it's modified compared to the version that it was last year, excluding the CFB revision. So I'm just really wondering what that's all about. I yield.
Before I hear any more motions, I'd like to ask the swear-in, since we are running dangerously close to 2 o'clock, to come to the center of the horseshoe for today. That being Jackson Beckman and Hafsar. I apologize if I butchered the name right there. No. You don't get sworn in until after training. Senators were already sworn in.
Hey guys, so
Yeah.
Could swear in today if they choose one position and would swear in
Correct.
at the next meeting if they chose another? Just to throw that out there.
I would like to give the candidate time to think about his decision.
Okay. I just wanted.
If once the decision is made, I will state.
I just don't want them to lose out on
Yes.
time if they choose one position.
I would like to state that, like, if they chose for the senator position, they'll get the training beforehand and then get sworn in immediately next meeting, or the normal training process will apply for the executive position if they choose for the executive position.
Okay, thank you.
Say again?
Meeting?
Yes.
Okay. How
Yes,
fun.
it does.
Our audience member. Although.
Correct. They're already acting. This was a reaffirmation.
Okay, all right. When I say state your name, please state your name. When I say state your organization and position, both your organizations are student government. Your position is Director of Leadership Development. Your position is Sophomore Senator. All right. Please raise your right hand and repeat after me. I state your name. Will faithfully uphold the student government of Utica Constitution and carry out the duties of your organization and position to the best of my ability, and will represent the students of SUNY Poly in a fair and unbiased manner. Congrats.
By Senator Weddle of what the location of the documents are. I'll refer this to Secretary Wu.
Yeah, I'll do that after finals week.
Which section?
All
of
of them?
Cool.
I yield to CFB.
2 days ago?
All right. Our audience member?
This is just a formal request as a student here at Poly, not as title, to last meeting, so 2 weeks ago, it was mentioned that the student ESA voted to increase the cap for student activity fee to $300. Currently, I know we're not close to that. Our student activity fee is $125, but I would like to encourage that we do not ever increase it, even by a singular dollar, as currently $125 is a lot, and we already basically are finding a current amount of money we've had and used. And I think it would be a bad thing and badly affect most of our students if we do increase it. While some of the students are not affected, other students like me who are not rich and also international students who have to pay a 30% increase on every single bill due to currency exchange policies in the United States government cannot really barely afford some of us can barely afford college anyway, and it's unfair to increase that burden by however much by increasing the student activity fee, so I would like to request that we do not even look into increasing the student activity fee.
Before you continue, I'd just like to ask, like, why you think we're raising the student activity fee?
Well, I was asking we don't because
Okay.
you mentioned it last that the cap was increased to $300.
So just a point of information for you. It was passed by SUNY SA. That still needs to go through the SUNY board, though. It hasn't gone through the SUNY board yet.
That's just my point.
Okay. Pro Tem Ludoan? We have a motion to adjourn. Is there a second? Second by Senator Pena. Going to the vote on the... Sorry, I apologize for butchering your name. Going on, voting for the motion of adjournment. All those in favor of adjourning, please raise your hand. All those opposed? And all those who abstain. That passes 5-2.